Well, congratulations to Bradford City on promotion last season. I underestimated them before the campaign. I had them finishing as low as 15th. I thought they would massively underwhelm, as they have for a few seasons in there since coming down to League Two in 2019. But I think what's really stood out to me is that having David Sharp on board as director of football has pretty directly coincided with their improvement under Graham Alexander, certainly from a point of view of the standard of recruitment. And he seems like a really experienced, intelligent football man who's just put a steady hand on things. And it's kind of allowed people like Ryan Sparks, for instance, to maybe tailor his work into areas that he's better suited to, into the more commercial aspects of the business, and allowed people like Graham Alexander maybe that bit more freedom to know that the recruitment side is being taken care of. So with all those things in mind, I think David Sharp deserves a huge amount of credit. But I think you also got to give loads of credit to Graham Alexander for the way he adjusted to the loss of Andy Cook in January and came up with a different template. That pressing system worked an absolute treat and went and sent them on a brilliant winning streak from January, which was crucial to them getting over the line at Warsaw's expense. But new challenges ahead in League One. Really intrigued to see how their operational infrastructure is going to hold up at that level. Certainly in terms of fan base and club stature, it's a level that the club is going to be very comfortable with and very familiar with. But yeah, how good is the recruitment going to be? And how can Bradford City adjust to League One? And can they work towards reclaiming their status from around the sort of the mid to late 2010s, when they were regular promotion contenders at that level? I think they lost in the playoffs to Millwall twice, didn't they? Once in a semi-final and once in the final, under Phil Parkinson, then Stuart McCall. That's going to be the mid-term ambition for Bradford City. Short term, is it just survival? Plenty to get stuck into then in this summer deep dive. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. If you like what we do here, you can do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. That would really help us out. So delighted to be joined by my guests this evening, Chris Windsor and Ewan Hudson from the 1911 podcast on the Bantams. Chris, Ewan, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. Chris, to you first of all, has last season's achievement made you feel more confident in Bradford City as an operational entity?
Yeah, I think it's difficult not to see that. There was a lot of issues with investment from the owner. There was obviously worries that the owner wasn't interested. He'd been in. He's coming up to 10 years now since he's been in charge. And I think there was massive worries. There was talk, for instance, Ryan Sparks, who's the CEO, had said that, we're looking at mediocrity. We're looking at finishing mid-table, or even worse, was actually that, as long as we stay up in League Two. And when fans heard that, obviously there was a lot of issues. There was a lot of unhappiness, I think, is probably the nicest way to put it. And I think that, fair play to Stefan Rupp, what he's done is he's come along, he's put his money where his mouth is. And if you look at, obviously, for instance, January, he's done that. He's brought in the players that we've needed.
Has he put his money where his mouth is, Chris, when you've got 24,000 fans at the last home game against Fleetwood? Is this about Stefan Rupp putting the money in, or is it about Bradford City with their inherent fan base actually having the money to buy players and doing what they should be doing?
I think it's a bit of both, isn't it, really? I mean, everybody is in the league that they deserve to be in. So, I hate the fact or the concept of Bradford City's too big for League Two or League One or whatever. You are where you are because that's exactly where you are because of the performances on the pitch. There's obviously other things behind the scenes that you start to worry about, and you kind of start to think, is that part of the problem? I think that Stefan, for instance, probably wasn't as involved or as interested in the football game in general until probably in the last 18 months or so. And I think that luckily for us, he has now fallen in love with it. And he's put his money where his mouth is. He said was it about 18 months ago? He said, I'm going to start, I will put money into the club now. I will start making sure that we're not looking at mediocrity anymore. And so far, so good. And especially with some of the signings that we've made so far in the summer, I think that it's a positive club for the first time in 8 to 10 years, where we actually are really excited for the season. I'm looking forward for what's coming forwards for this season, and it's exciting times, to be honest with you.
Well, let's hope that's the case. I think the one thing that stands out to me, Chris, is I think Ryan Sparks tends to think what's the external perception of us, and I think that's really helpful from a commercial and marketing point of view, because you've got to be aware of what other people are thinking in that sense. But what I think David Sharp has probably brought to the club is, let's focus on our own game. How do we need to recruit players that are going to fit into our strategy? And let's be very clear about that. And I think that bringing in David Sharp has just settled things down behind the scenes. That would be my sort of perception. I don't know if that's how it feels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Ryan was probably trying to do everything behind the scenes. He was trying to do the recruitment. He was trying to, he's very good at bringing in money into the club, is Ryan, to be fair to him. And I think as a CEO, as doing the role that he's doing now, where he can concentrate on the operational sides of the game, I think that he's it's fair play to say that he's absolutely succeeded this season. And also, he does deserve kudos as well. It was him who brought in David Sharp as well. So from my understanding is that he talked to Stefan and said that I want David in. They're friends. And I think that step absolutely has changed us. Again, I've mentioned January already, but if you look at the players that we brought in January, and then the system and the way we started to look forward, you absolutely have to praise David Sharp for everything that he's done so far. And it's really exciting to see what he's done, and it's good for Ryan as well to be able to kind of do the other side, the nitty gritty things that need doing. But I think that Ryan probably always wanted to do that. I think it's probably very difficult for him, where he's come in first time as CEO. He's had to learn through the job. I mean, there has been criticism. I mean, at times I might have thrown a little bit of criticism for him.
Yeah.
But I think, I think what we have to look at is that he has really grown as a CEO. And when you're listening to him now in interviews, I think he speaks really well. I think he seems more settled. He seems not to be as bothered by what's going on or what's being said by other people. He's just getting on with his job. And David Sharp's then able to get on with his job with the recruitment side of things and bringing the players, I mean, there has been a bit of a connection with a lot of the players that we're bringing in with David Sharp, with his kind of his Wigan links. But I think that's great, because of the caliber of players that we brought in so far. I'm really glad to see, and hopefully long will it continue in this summer.
Absolutely, yeah. Ewan, I know you're more focused on-field matters than off-field, so I'll ask you about Graham Alexander. What do you has he almost won over some hearts and minds in this just gone season?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of negativity around his style of football. Obviously, I think everyone's aware it can be not the prettiest at a lot of times, and the final game of the season was a real testament to that. It wasn't pretty stuff, but at the end of the day, he gets the club over the line, and that's his message, really. His philosophy is one game at a time. He's the ultimate manager of that philosophy. I think just take game at a time. We're never going to get sucked into anything. We're not thinking ahead. We're just doing one step at once, and it's a good philosophy to have. I think it's right for the club, because I think, like Chris has said, with the not buying into we're too big for this league, we need to be better than we are, because you can't fix that in the moment. You need to be able to just take it one game at a time, and like you say, let the people behind the scenes do all the work in order to stabilize the football club, and then you can move on from there with stuff on the pitch.
Certainly has. Well, let's have a look at the squad then. In terms of the goalkeeping department, now you've got Hilton and Haddy, who are the young goalkeepers in the squad, who I wouldn't expect to feature much, and I would imagine we'd be looking at a loan for those two. Sam Walker has extended his stay, but Chris, my view on the goalkeeping position is I think Sam Walker would be an excellent backup. But I think you need to recruit a number one goalkeeper. Whether you'll do that, I don't know. But that would be my perspective on it.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. I think Sam absolutely deserves his spot in that team. For he's become a real fan favourite. He's really kind of embraced his time at Bradford. He absolutely deserves his chance, and hopefully he will take that chance. I can kind of see sometimes where you're coming from with that, but I think that for me, there's absolutely no doubt that Sam Walker will be number one, and I don't.
He's got a mistake in him, like you say, but some of the saves he pulls off at crucial points in games, just off the top of my head, when we beat Colchester at home and we were 2-1 up, 3-1 up, and he made that amazing one-on-one save, and it totally changed the perspective of the game because Colchester were having a bit of a momentum swing, and after that save, we just roared back to score another 2 goals. And against Fleetwood, even in the first half, he kept that clean sheet with a phenomenal one-on-one save inside sort of a really close situation. So he's a fantastic goalkeeper. He does have a mistake in him, but I can't see him ever being replaced.
My question mark, though, gents, would be Sam Walker. Normally, and this is quite simplistic, but my general rule of thumb is to be a starter in either position, in any position, I would want them to be young, either young relative to their position that they're in, where they've got loads of growth potential and you feel like they're going to get better every season, or if they're a little bit on the older side or peak age, you want, which Sam Walker is probably at his peak as a goalkeeper, you would want them to have a certain pedigree and profile for the level. And my question mark around Sam Walker would be that he doesn't really have much of a pedigree or a history in League One. I think he did have some time as a backup at Reading. He is well liked at Colchester, but I believe that's mainly from his time in League Two, or certainly, and that was quite a while ago as well. So I'm just wondering, in terms of pedigree and profile, is there a question mark to be asked about? Yes, Sam Walker had his days in the sun in League Two, but in the same way that you've added another level of a right wing back that we'll come on to in terms of Josh Naufil. I don't know, in that goalkeeping position, is there better to look for?
No, I don't. I think absolutely. I think Sam. I think again, that's all kind of like relative in the fact that he has to be given that opportunity in League One. As you say, he's not really had that pedigree. But listen, the thing is with goalkeepers, they get better as they get older, don't they? But for me, there's absolutely no question for me that Sam Walker is number one next season, and I'm all for it as well. I think Hilton was probably brought in just to give a little bit of pressure for him, because he didn't have any, because we had Colin Doyle, obviously, and Colin's 40. I think he's 40 now. Yeah. So there was never any real pressure on him. So I think that with Hilton, I think we also see him as someone for the future. So there's that potential with him. So I think that if Sam does have a couple of issues or a couple of problems or a couple of problem games, then I think that Hilton will put that pressure on him. So, but for me, I genuinely don't have any problem. I think that people always look at the goal against Doncaster, where yes, he was out of position, but another one that Ewan didn't mention as well was I think it was Crewe. Was it the penalty against Crewe, Ewan?
Yeah, it's phenomenal penalty save, brilliant. The crowd obviously did their part with all the flag waving, 24,000 people behind that goal, doing the best they can to keep it out. But it's tucked right in the corner, and it's an incredible save. There's no doubt he's going to be the number one, and Hilton, I would expect, would be the cup goalkeeper who, like you say, is there for the future, but there to put pressure on as well, and also probably relieve Colin Doyle, because even at 40, even that's quite old for a goalkeeper.
Neville Southall style ages here.
Yeah, that's true. That was one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we disagree a little bit on that. I think that could hold you back a little bit, but hopefully he proves me wrong and has a great season in League One. So moving on to the defence now, I've mapped this squad out, Ewan, as a 3-4-2-1 because that's the formation you used when you had that very successful run in the second half of last season. But one thing I'm slightly mindful of is Brad Halliday, because he was very much the race captain, the right wing back, starts every game, and you've signed Josh Naufil to be a right wing back. But I'm wondering, is there a possibility that you actually go back to a back four and Brad Halliday plays right back and Josh Naufil plays right wing? Because if you look at the balance of profiles of those players, I think either of those players will be quite unlucky based on what they've delivered and their importance to the team for one of them to not be starting, which is why I would think, could it be a 4-2-3-1 or something similar?
So the club have come out officially and said that Naufil is Halliday's competitor. They are direct competitors. So that was announced at the fans forum that they were going to be sort of not obviously directly sort of competing, not to put it in a really sort of gladiatorial way, but they would be playing for the same position, so to speak. It's a phenomenal signing, probably the best in the EFL to this day, this summer window. But yeah, like you say, it's replacing one of the best right backs in League Two last season with the best right wing back in League Two last season. So it's a phenomenal strength signing, but you do wonder, I do feel a little sorry for Halliday as well, because he did have probably not his best season at Bradford last year, but definitely a very strong season.
So I absolutely love the addition. I think Josh Naufil is going to bring pace and strength, and I think he's going to add some numbers because I think he can get to the byline and get cutbacks and really excited from that point of view. I'm curious kind of about the depth conversation, in terms of the balance of the wage expenditure from one right wing back who's been a really important player, Brad Halliday, in the last couple of years, is it wise when you're a self-funded club to sign two players for one position who could easily be among the best players in your team? It's a lovely luxury to have, but only if you're able to have the right kind of strength in the best 11 in other areas. So that's just the one thing that I would say about the signing. But in terms of quality, I think I totally agree with you, and I think it's a phenomenal acquisition.
Yeah, I think also as well, we genuinely don't know how much what kind of money Stefan put into the club this summer. He's been mentioning, and he mentioned in an interview with BBC that he thinks that the funds that he would be putting in would put us towards the playoffs. So I don't mind it. I like the fact that you've got those two players in competition with themselves. And the thing is, as well, with that, is you are going to see the best of them. If you don't see the best of them, then they're going to be out of the team this week. And when you look at the quality of the two of them, I think that's really exciting. And I think that's something that we haven't been able to do. There's been certain positions in the last year where we've only had one person for that position, and I think that going forwards, if we want to compete this season in this league, then I think that that's something that we do need to do, and we need to keep it. We need to keep doing that and bringing in more and more competition. And I'm all for it. I'm absolutely all for it. And especially with a player like him, I'm kind of the same with you. And when I found out that we'd signed him, I was absolutely elated. I think I was texting you, Gab, about it. He was probably my favourite player that I saw last season. He wasn't the best player I've seen last season, but he was probably my favourite player last year. But that's how good his quality was. So great addition. Really excited for it, and I think that it'll give him lots of competition for Halliday, and it'll give him a little bit of a kick where he knows that his position isn't necessarily guaranteed.
Well, I think it's a wonderful acquisition, just as long as you've got the right strength. You got to finish the window with the right strength spread across the squad. In terms of the right centre-back spot in a 3, because from what Ewan's saying there, it does sound like it's going to be a 3-4-2-1 at least to start the season. Ewan, what do you make of Aidan Baldwin, and would you be happy for him to start the season?
I think in the same way that we talked about Sam Walker, he does have a mistake in him, and I haven't quite forgiven him for kind of throwing in the towel at Doncaster away with that absolutely ridiculously stupid red card. But it's water on the bridge now. Just focus on the next season. I think he has earned probably his chance, although I'd be much more apprehensive about him playing right centre back than I would be having Walker in goal. Because I know Walker is good. I've watched him play, and I've watched Baldwin play, and I know he's got a mistake in him. In terms of the numbers we need to bring in, though, I don't think we're going to get enough centre backs in to cover all possible players that we think, oh, well, is he really good enough for League One? Especially where we're going to be challenging by the looks of things. So I think he will probably stay, possibly start, because I don't think it's a position that the club really desperately need to strengthen. I think there's bigger goals and bigger positions that need strengthening. I don't know, Chris might disagree with me.
No, I'm with you 100% on that one for a change.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I do kind of find it interesting that for the right wing back spot, they're really happy to try and find somebody to compete with one of your best players over the last couple of seasons. But in other areas where there's weaker areas in the team, that the attitude is, oh, we'll just go with them, kind of thing. I don't. That's just
But we've still got a while yet. I mean, listen,
no, I know.
We're not even into pre-season yet,
True.
Thing it's we haven't said how many players we're going to sign this summer. That we don't know what that's going to be. So there could be players that we're looking at that we're in conversations with, and I don't think that we need necessarily to panic about that situation just yet. I think that's something that we look at when we're playing our first game of the season. That's when we can say, well, that might be a strange decision or not. But I mean, I personally think we've still got at least 3 players coming in, if not maybe more. And obviously a couple of contract extensions as well. So
we've still got some players to ship off as well. There's still some deadwood in that squad that is going to be moved on, you would assume.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I suppose one possibility for that right centre-back spot is George Goodman has signed his first professional contract this summer. I don't know if either of you have been able to get an inkling, so I'll kind of throw this open to the panel if you like, if anyone's been able to get any kind of inkling on George Goodman and whether they think he's got some potential.
Yeah, the club have been talking about him for probably a couple of years now. He's obviously come through the youth setting. I think there's been a little bit of talk about him. Don't know massive about him because I've not really watched much of his game, so I don't want to pretend that I'm an absolute expert on him. But from what I hear from the club and other people is that he is quite, he's got potential. Do I see him in that position? I don't think so, not yet. I think that probably George will, which is what we always do, is probably will go on loan somewhere or will play in the cup games. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he's the next Bobby Point and come through, which is absolutely what we want to see. We want to see young lads coming through into the team because we haven't had many that do. So. I would, so it's exciting times for him as well. But I think obviously the jury's out yet. We just need to give him a little bit of a chance. But certainly I don't see him in that position just yet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, maybe a Bradford Park Avenue or a Guiseley kind of lane would suit George Goodman. Middle centre-back, Ewan, I wanted to ask you about Neil Byrne and Curtis Tilt, because neither of them I would be especially comfortable with in a wide centre-back position. But I guess if they're in a middle centre-half and they've got quick defenders either side of them, then they would be pretty solid. Unless you think Joe Wright would be.
I think Joe Wright will be starting in centre-back, and I would expect him to play every game of this season. That is another signing that really shows the level we are working at now. We're not signing we have signed Curtis Tilt, but we'll come on to that. We're signing players with accolades, who we've signed Wimbledon's player of the season. We've just signed Kilmarnock's player of the season. We're going out there to get these big players. Wright is a fantastic acquisition. I would expect him to start central centre-back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, I think both Phil and Joe Wright are extremely exciting signings. I think from Wright's point of view, Yes, he was Player of the Year with Kilmarnock, as Ewan mentioned, but I also really liked him for a number of seasons at this level with Doncaster Rovers. So I believe him to be a very reliable defender. So absolutely brilliant acquisition there. Chris, I would, if we're assuming that Joe Wright's going to play as that middle centre up, I could only see Neil Byrne being offloaded because if you've got Joe Wright as the middle centre half and you've signed Curtis Tilt, who I think could only play as the middle centre half because I don't think he's quick enough to play as an outside centre half, then I think Neil Byrne probably needs to be offloaded.
Yeah, I think you thought I was saying that Curtis Tilt was past then, didn't you? Which isn't the case. Yeah. Listen, again, I don't know. I don't know whether we might actually keep hold of Byrne. I think towards the end of the season, I think that he actually came into his own. I think in some ways, to be honest with you, I think that he was probably a little bit underrated for his performances towards the end of the season. I thought he was quite, he was Mr. Reliable. I think he had a difficult time when he first came in. That there was maybe a little bit of up in an ahhing about whether he was good enough. But Neil was solid, to be honest with you. The only time I can remember where he wasn't was when Colchester went through 1-on-1 in the 4-1 game.
But Chris, was that as a middle centre half or as an outside centre half?
It's a great question, Gab. I wish I could tell you.
Okay. I can't even back you up because I can't remember. I think he has played left-sided centre back as well. But like you say, I would see him as a central centre half rather than as someone as you want to play on the outside. Mostly because I think we have or will have better players suited for the outside centre backs, like you say, who just have a bit more pace and passing ability about them.
Baldwin, I'd be very comfortable in those 1v1 situations. So I think you definitely need a left-footed centre half who's quick and strong. I think that's going to be a big priority. In terms of left wing back, I mean, the dream is to get Adara Mola back on loan from Crystal Palace.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen though because we've just signed Ibu Toure, so that's not going to happen.
Oh, he signed, does he?
Yeah, that was rather underwhelmingly announced yesterday with the kit launch. It was sort of underneath all of it. It was concrete for quite a while, and they're obviously holding off for the kit launch, and that seemed to get possibly delayed by all these setbacks that Macron have had recently, especially in the last sort of few years. But yeah, that's confirmed 2-year deal now. Interestingly enough, he can play as a left-sided centre back, I believe.
He did for Stockport, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah. So if we're hearing rumours that Lewis Richards has indeed signed a new contract and we're sort of waiting for that to be announced, then that's another option for the left side. We haven't mentioned Kieran Kelly as well, but
he's Kieran, because I completely on the retained list. I don't know.
Is he another one that's being offered a new contract? Am I making that up?
No. He's been offered a contract. The local media seem to think that he will. Well, it's kind of. I think it's 50-50 at the moment whether he's going to sign a new contract. But I imagine he probably will.
I really want him to stay because I remember sort of pre-injury he was really good, really, really good, and he looked so comfortable in that wide centre back role where you almost see your centre backs when you trapping the opposition in the box. You have your centre backs on the corners of the 18-yard box basically, and he could deliver a mean ball into the back post for Andy Cook. I'd like him to stay as similar to Byrne, but kind of on the opposite side of things in the sense that he was really good and he had that injury and then we ummed and ahed about him, whereas Byrne was sort of the other way around. I'd like to see him stay and fight for his place really. But again, it's a question of wages. How many centre backs do we have, and how?
No, I think the thing is, Ewan, you've got to think about them as separate roles. Wide centre half and completely.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I think you've got to take that seriously. Moving into, I suppose, you've got Tyreek Wright as well, who, seeing as it's likely to be 3-4-2-1, Chris, he would be a very attacking option, I guess, for League One. But I guess in those home games where you want to force the issue, he could be an option possibly from the bench, even if Ibu Toure would be the favourite to start.
For me, there's no question. I don't think that Tyreek will be in the first 11 at all. I don't think he's even in the thinking, if I'm honest with you. I could see him as probably an impact player off the bench. I think probably for the best for Tyreek would actually probably to be moving on as well. I think he probably needs a new chance and new opportunity, if I'm honest with you. I mean, he started to he went out of the team for a couple of months last season, and he never really regained what his ability is. I mean, I'll always remember against Accrington the season before where he was absolutely unplayable. He scored 2 goals in the first half, and then he came off on the 46th minute injured. So,
Hang on. Sorry, I was at that game. I believe he got a hat trick.
No, I think he got 2.
Cookie must have got one as well. Yeah. I remember that game because everything happened at the far end, and then nothing happened at our end where the away fans were. Typical.
That's the game, because I think we scored 2 in the first 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Something like that, and they were both Tyreek. Anyway, yeah. So that was another gaff. So yeah, I think that Tyreek. I don't see Tyreek in the plans, if I'm honest. Unless.
And same with Carcador. We think he'll be out the door.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's both of those players kind of fall into the same category. Is that they were both out the team for a long period of time, and then came back in when everyone was injured, sort of in that period of February, March, April. And Wright had some really good performances there. Away at Birmingham, I was actually really impressed with him, especially in the second half. I thought he really put a shift in a really, really tough game. But yeah, just like I think the best thing for him is, especially with Torre coming in, Richard's possibly signing a new contract, just maybe move on. It depends. We will find out where Torre is going to play, because if he is destined for that left centre back role, then there is a slot and a place for Wright in the team, I think.
I would prefer,
but not for a door. No, I don't see him playing.
Prefer Kieran Kelly to sign, or Ciaran Kelly, and then Toure to play ahead of them. That would be my preference, but we shall see. One area, Chris, that looks a little bit short at the moment is those deeper midfield spots, especially with Richie Smallwood leaving, and definitely a bit of a playmaker void at the moment, with Max Power signed a slightly different profile. Anthony Sasovich, I guess, can possibly play a little bit deeper, but yeah, probably another central midfielder to come in.
Yeah, I think so, and I don't think any Bradford fan has forgiven you yet, Gab, for not putting him in the team of the season. Yeah, listen.
I never quite recovered from the shame, Chris.
So yeah, I think in all seriousness, I think it's a position that I am slightly concerned about, and hoping that because obviously Graham had originally agreed, or had said, sorry, to Richie, he was going to offer him a new contract. So Richie went on holiday.
Yeah.
And while he was on holiday, Graham decided the opposite. He decided he wasn't going to offer him a contract, and he said that something just felt, that it was one of the hardest things he's done in his managerial career. He must have another plan, I think. I feel that we do need another position. That for me is the second area that we really need to make stronger, and we do need probably some kind of player that is a little bit like Richie. I think it was very disappointing for us all when he left. I think we definitely would have liked to have seen him for another year at least, after the performances of last year, and it's just that's football, isn't it?
Yeah, I can understand why Richie Smallwood felt a little bit miffed, perhaps, that he was told one thing and then the situation changed. I can kind of understand why Graham Alexander might have made that mistake, because I think in the week or two after promotion, you're still in a very emotional headspace where you're like, I love these boys. They're amazing. They've given me this incredible memory. They've been right there with me over the whole season. And of course, we're going to go with you on the journey to League One. And yeah, we're going to do it, boys. And then you take some time away and you go on holiday and you sort of reflect in a more, right, this is League One, a step up to the level, who's going to be required. And you look at it from a completely different, a more analytical, perhaps, lens. and all of a sudden it's possible for your mindset to change on things. And so in a way, I'm glad that Graham Alexander did have the courage of his convictions to go back on what he'd said, even if it would risk his relationship with Richie and make him disappointed, because I think that shows an integrity in doing what's right, what he thinks is right for the club. But I can also understand why Richie would feel disappointed at being told one thing and it actually turning out to be another thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's the manager's discretion, isn't it? And I know that obviously Richie was a little bit hurt by that. Certainly, we made in the papers where he mentioned about that he was being telling that he was told that he was going to get a contract and then he didn't get the contract. So you can understand. But at the end of the day, if Graham's decided that he doesn't think that Richie is in his plans for the next season, then that's on him, and that's something that might come back at Graham, to be honest with you. But that's something that he will have to deal with. So, we're all a little bit gutted. We're all still a little bit gutted about it, but I'm just looking at the kind of players that we're bringing in so far, and let's just see what happens in 2 to 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that playmaker role is going to be really important because Ewan, I think Alex Patterson already has a lovely skill set that I think if you can complement him with that sort of deep lying playmaker who can keep moves ticking over, it will be a lovely blend because Patterson brings that dynamism and that energy, which made such a. I mean, I think there was an argument that in the previous season, him getting injured was a massive factor in form dropping off, and I think we saw his importance in the second half of last season when he returned.
Yeah, I think last season we didn't see the best of him. That was really clear, and this season we definitely have from game one right the way through, and he's just about managed to stay fit for enough of the season, I think, to have a massive impact. And like you say, he completely changes the way we play. The amount of goals we score where he's picked up the ball in the centre circle and just drives forward 30 yards before either shooting himself or laying it off to someone else is incredible. He's got a real life of goal. He's a really good player, and like you say, he needs that 6 next to him who's going to anchor if he's allowed that license to be able to run. It is interesting that the club are kind of billing the Max Power signing as he's going to play the 6, which doesn't. It could work, and I could eat my words, but he's not the right caliber of player, or he is yet to prove that in his time. There is always still hope, but yeah, Patterson definitely is starting centre mid alongside a number 6, whether that's they want that to be Power or someone else.
Yeah, I completely agree. So in terms of those 2 number 10 spots, that's probably the deepest area of the squad. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Chris, but you've got Bobby Poynton there, you've got George Lapsley, you've got Stephen Humphreys, who could play as a sort of wide forward. You got Anthony Sasovic and you got Tommy Lee. So 6 options vying for 2 positions. So plenty of competition there. And I would imagine maybe George Lapsley could be offloaded, perhaps.
I'd like to see George stay, if I'm honest with you. I think George, I think he was quite crucial at times last season. I mean, this is probably a little bit harsh, but I think with George, when he's on it, he's absolutely brilliant. But when he's not quite there, he's not great at all, and he's invisible on the pitch. But I'd like to see George stay. I think that he's probably deserved his spot in that squad. But also, I think it'd be good for him as well for the competition. And I think that knowing kind of like the character that he is, I think it will make him raise his game as well. So I would absolutely keep him. The problem is you've got players like, for instance, like Clark Ador, who needs to start and he needs to find a new club, and he's got another year on his contract. Some bizarre reason we gave him a 3-year contract. Not quite sure why that happened instead of the usual 2. So I would like to see that, but I think you're right. I think in that position we have got a really strength in depth. I'm very excited about seeing Humphreys. I think that the fact that a lot of Barnsley fans were quite gutted that he'd left. I know a lot of Wigan fans were talking about that they would like to have seen him back, and it seems from what I'm gathering as well from Barnsley fans is that when he plays central forward, he's not as he's not as impactful. But when he's playing on the wing, or he's playing on the sides, certainly in the last, was it 5 goals in 5 games he scored for Barnsley? That seems to be everywhere on Twitter, by the way. So everyone keeps mentioning that, but that seems to be that position really worked for him last season. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. I think that I think he'll be a starter, if I'm honest. I think it has to be a starter, to be honest with you. It has to be.
Yeah, I think the nature of the saga of the transfer, obviously, where it looked like it was a dead cert that he was going to go to MK Dons, and that almost seemed signed and delivered, and we've nipped in to sign him, but he's come out and said that it was a no-brainer. So we must have, and also there's reliable sources on social media who are saying we've thrown some fair brass at this, apparently, in terms of wages. So if we're willing to do that, also it'd be slightly different if he was, say, I don't know, going to Bolton or somewhere like that, like a direct rival in the league. But he was going to MK Dons. There's got to be a real reason and need for us to hijack that deal if it was true that he was going there. So I think, on that basis, you have to say he looks like he's going to be starting.
But he's an inside forward, I would class him as.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very much, I would say, similar to Lapsley. Obviously, slightly more powerful, but
no, I would
same
describe
sort of
that
position.
Sorry, you and I describe Lapsley as a 10.
Yeah, Lapsley has played wide forward for us. That was where he mostly played last season, and that's where he was most impactful. Is making sort of late runs into the box, especially back post sort of thing or front post. Right. But again, we have a lot of players like that are branded as these flexible players, and you know what? They're not very good in any position, really. Looking at Lee, Lapsley, Wright, Edouard. Edouard can play about 5 positions, and I wouldn't have him in any of them. But Humphrey, I think he starts.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, Poynton and Sartovic made pretty good cases for themselves last season.
Yeah, that's the thing that is being left out of a lot of our sort of team sheets that we're making up, is that, Sarcevic is nowhere to be seen. Like, this is a player that was very crucial. He got us promoted via an own goal, but he deserves his place in the lineup. But where does he fit? Are we going to start dropping him further back because he's starting to get on a bit? Does he take the power slot, like you said? Can he play as a deep line playmaker? It is like you say, it is our strongest position by far. We've got so many decent players in that position.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, isn't it? And this is why I do wonder at times whether we do change our formation this season with the kind of players that we're bringing in. So it's going to be interesting to see whether we do change that.
I think I know like what Ewan said was Nerfield's been brought in to be competition for Halliday, but I think there's that signing and the Humphrey signing would make more sense if it's actually a switch to 4-2-3-1, because you've got Halliday at right back, you've got Nerfield as a right winger, you've got possibly Poynton or Sarcevic in the 10, and you've got Humphreys in that wide forward role, and you've got Toure as that very attacking left back. And I think that would actually provide quite a nice balance, because it would kind of mirror elements of the 3-4-2-1 shape in the way that the sort of fullbacks and the sort of wide forwards operate. But it would also sort of fit a little bit better for some of the personnel. So that's what I think. Possibly.
Yeah, it's also worth pointing out that if we played as a 4-2-3-1, you're looking at more of a double pivot with your central midfielders rather than having an out-and-out 6th and an out-and-out 8, if you know what I mean, which would free Power and Patterson up to work alongside each other, just because you've got that 10 also supporting you ahead of you. It's a thought for if that ever comes to fruition. Maybe that's what they're planning and we're just passengers in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, I want to ask you about Andy Cook, because almost, I'm not going to say forgotten man, I think that feels like the wrong word, but weirdly, he was the first half of the season, the whole rhetoric was Bradford City's playoff push depends on Andy Cook, which has been quite a familiar theme of the last couple of years. Cook got injured and actually Callum Kavanagh started without starring individually, but seemed to coincide with the team actually doing a bit better. And so it creates this intriguing dilemma, which, presuming Cook and Kavanagh are the ones jostling for the one centre forward position, do you go with the guy who scored however many goals over the last 3 years at Valley Parade, or do you go with the guy who started as part of the more successful blueprint in the second half of last season?
See, I think this is where a few Bradford City fans would disagree. So it's been quite a conversation over the last 6 months, was where, when Cook got injured, that started kind of like, that was where the kind of resurgence started, or where we started to play quite well. Personally, my feelings, I don't think it's other people's feelings, is that coincided with the fact that Sarcevic and Patterson came back into the team.
Yeah.
But I think when we're looking at Cookie would start. I mean, there's talk about whether he might still miss the first 2 months of the season.
That's been confirmed now. That was one of the things that came up in the fans forum, is that he will definitely not be fit for the start of the season.
So you've got that kind of issue. I believe that we will bring in another centre forward. I think it might be someone. I think it might be a name. I think it might be, well, obviously it's going to have a name, but I think it might be someone who's done quite well in this league. I've just got a feeling. I don't know that for a fact, but I just think that we probably might go all out and bring in somebody. So that would be competition for Cookie. Cookie's getting on a little bit. And the thing is, what you have to realistically look at is the fact that, with the type of injury that he's just had, will we ever see the real Cookie again? And for God's sake, I hope we do. I really do hope that we see him back to what he's worth, because Cookie's quality, and he's, people will knock him, but the amount of goals that he scores year after year after year after year, he's Mr. Reliable. But what we'd have to do with Cookie is make sure that we don't go back to the same style of play that we played at the beginning of the season.
So my perspective on this, Chris, is I think it's absolutely true that Sarcevic and Patterson coming back was enormous factors behind the run in the second half of the season. But I would question whether Andy Cook would have fitted in as naturally as Kavanagh to the pressing system, in terms of being constantly aggressive against the ball and pressing opponents into submission, which he did just extraordinarily well against Grimsby in January. That was the start of the run, and that sense of being able to play a hopeful ball down the channel and for Kavanagh to run onto it in a way that Cookie probably wouldn't have done. I think that was one small factor.
Yeah.
So I would say I think whoever signs this summer has to be able to have similar qualities to Kavanagh against the ball. And I think for this season, certainly initially, I would have Cookie as a impact sub for the last 20 minutes, get crosses from Knifeville and from Torre and from Kieran Kelly, like Ewan mentioned, and have him as a focal point when you need a goal. And maybe later on in the season, if you need to change things up, he can become that number one centre forward. But right now, I think he would be the ace up your sleeve.
Yeah, I think obviously he's going to be out for nearly a year, so we've got to obviously treat him. So he is going to be the impact forward, whatever happens off the bench anyway. But Callum Kavanagh his work rate is phenomenal at times. I'm a big fan of Callum. I really like him. Do I think he can step up? I'm not too sure, if I'm honest. However, he does ooze confidence, and I think that actually this might be a positive for him. I think that actually we might see a really, really strong player that we've been hoping to see. And when he first came in, he was brilliant, and he at times with Callum, when it's not going his way, he sulks a bit and he disappears. Mm-hmm. So when it's not going right, he does disappear into the game, and he gets annoyed and he gets frustrated. However, he seems towards the end of the season, he seemed to get control of that and actually stay focused in the game. So that's what my hopes is with Callum. But I do think that we will bring in another centre forward to compete with it. I mean, we have to, luckily we've just got a little bit of money because Vidane Oliver's now finally off the wage. So because the contract that on, from what I understand, was pretty
hefty.
Pretty hefty. So we've got that. Hopefully, we've got that money there to bring in somebody. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of player. I mean, I certainly don't dispute what you've said there about the Andy Cook thing. I think that's probably sensible for the beginning with, and let's just see what happens and whether he works in his formation. But listen, he goals everywhere. He's been in different formations. Let's just let Cookie be Cookie, I think.
Yeah, I think from sort of my point of view, I'd love to see Cookie take more of a passenger role if he is going to fit into the team. So if we play with the inside forwards, he's not going to need to do as much movement, and he's going to actually play a lot more like Billy Sharp did at Sheffield United, in the sense that I loved watching Sharp about 10 years ago, because he would go missing from a game and then the game would end and you realise he'd scored a hat-trick because he'd just been Johnny on the spot everywhere on the pitch. Sharp obviously had the benefit of being quite rapid at the time, and he had a brilliant eye for goal, but so does Cookie. And I can see Cookie fitting into the team in a more passenger role. He doesn't need to be the focal point. He doesn't need to have every ball into his feet or onto his head. He can be a passenger and he can still provide goals, because someone has to be on the penalty spot to kick the balls in.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ewan, I want to ask you about the additions between now and the end of the window. I would say you're going to be looking at another 3 or 4 additions, like we said earlier. I definitely think another centre half. I think re-sign Kelly, hopefully, but maybe 1 or 2 centre halves on top of that. And then I think another midfielder, with Sarcevic possibly dropping deeper to kind of complete the midfield, a set of options for those deeper spots. And then maybe 1 more centre forward, like you and Chris have mentioned. So 3 to 4 additions plus Kelly re-signing, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think all will be revealed when we come out for that first pre-season game. And I would not underestimate Sparks, Sharp, all the higher-ups, Alexander, having a plan of where they see this team, whether that is all change or whether that's we're going to play the same way, because it does hurt teams. We know that. We'll have to see. I think one of our advantages, like you say, is we are going to be quite a flexible team next year. We're going to have real strength in depth in a lot of different positions if we get our business right.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case. Chris, expectations for this season. Would you be content with mere survival? Or do you feel like, given a club of your stature, you should be aiming more towards the top half of the table?
I think there's a lot of excitement with the signings that we've brought in so far, and people are getting a little bit excited. I saw somebody put about 100 points Bradford City. Let's be realistic here. I think the end goal, I'd be happy for us to stay up this season. I don't really want any more pressure than the fact that we need to stay up this season, and whether we need to stabilise in League One for a little bit. I mean, obviously, if it goes the other way and we go towards the top of the table, then that'll be absolutely buzzing with that. Of course I will. But I think it's really difficult to tell. There's a lot of new players coming in. What do I think? I'm not sure. But for me, genuinely, I think I'm just happy with staying up and fingers crossed for that.
So, as you know, guys, I'm doing my 1 to 24 predictions in late July, and one of my processes for doing that this year is to mark each club out of 10 on 14 different categories that I think are going to determine their fate. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to shout out a category, and you can give me a number between 1 and 10. How does that sound?
Sounds fine to me. Should we take it in turns, Chris?
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
Thank you very much. Very gracious.
So, first category is ownership.
Before this window, I would have said 6, but I'm going to upgrade that to a 7.
7 out of 10 for ownership. There you have it. Infrastructure.
Well, we don't own the ground. We don't own the training facilities. I think I'm going to give it a very nice 2.
2 for infrastructure. There you have it. Playing budget.
Again, before the window, I probably would have said 5. I will upgrade that to 7, considering the rumours around the Humphreys transfer that we've thrown a fair bit of brass at this. It's turned this team from, like Chris was saying, sort of with expectations. It's turned this team from a sort of, we're going to give it a real good go to no, we've got a job to do here. We should do something this year because we've got players in and we were clearly going for something here. So yeah, I think a 6 is probably up there. We're not obviously competing with the top of the league, but we've clearly thrown something at it this year.
Management, Chris.
It's got to be an 8. It's got to be an 8.
Yep, I'd agree.
High praise for Graham Alexander from Chris and Ewan. Next category is the goalkeeping department.
Yeah, I think Colin Doyle is a fantastic goalkeeper coach. Sam Walker is going to be absolutely fine next season.
Yeah.
And Hilton's a good enough backup as well. Hady, obviously, you'd expect to be loaned out to a Guiseley, as you said. But yeah, I think we're fine. So 7. I don't know.
Okay. Defence, Chris.
Defence was that? Sorry, Gab. 6.
6 out of defence from Chris. Midfield.
At the moment, it's probably a 5, but I think it's to do with the clarity around sort of where and who and how we're going to set up. Like you say, if I open my Twitter and see we'd signed a number 6 who had League One pedigree, I would upgrade that 5 to probably a 7 or an 8. But I'm going to stick with a 5.
5, but could be higher depending on incomings.
Yes, absolutely.
Attack.
7.
7 out of 10 for the attack. Depth. Bearing in mind, for relative to the state of the window that we're at.
Depth for relative to the state of the window has got to be an 8 because we have made some great early signings. And like you say, we talked about Halliday, obviously, and Nerfville with the competition they've got. And we've got, like you say, for that inside forward role or whatever slot that may be, we've got so many players who I would be comfortable seeing start a League One game. So yeah, 8.
Squad stability, Chris.
7.
7 out of 10 for squad stability. Growth potential. So this is players you think are going to be a lot better this season rather than last, typically referring to young players.
My main issue with Poynton, especially in the last games of the season, this is something I've seen a few people throw up. It's not a criticism of him or how he plays, but he did get blinded, I think, sometimes by occasions, and it made him drop out of games, like we talked about with Kavanagh, where he sometimes can be a passenger. It depends how we build the team. If we give him the freedom and don't just make him a bit part player, we make him, a real part of the team, he can go from strength to strength. We know it. There's also a few players that I'm expecting to have some sort of introduction into the team this year. We've already mentioned Goodman in defence, but Ibbotson, I think, as well, might have some sort of cup run with the team. He came on as a very, very cameo appearance at Birmingham because there was literally no one else. And that sort of proves almost how close I suppose he is possibly to the team to breaking through. So I'd expect, especially, I mean, he did come on in, it was after Birmingham scored. So what was that, 87? So yeah, late in the game. But especially with the forward problems, we know Cav has dry patches. He had a massive one last season. And if Cookie is going to be a shadow of his former self, fingers crossed he isn't, I think Ibbotson could possibly break through. So I've got to give a number. I rambled for all that and then I didn't think of a number. I'm going to go 6.
6 out of 10 for great potential. Very nice. Team spirit, Chris.
Got to be a 9, hasn't it? It's got to be a 9, I think. Even though that obviously the new players have already seemed to be embedded into the squad. Yeah, stuff it. We've gone up. We've got into League One. I'm giving it a 9.
Fitness.
I don't know. It's off season.
Graham Alexander's training. Apparently, he's the week away in Austria. He's always absolutely mental.
Yeah, it is famously quite hectic and difficult on the players. So, 8.
8 out of 10 for fitness. And finally, quality.
Of the players themselves in general?
Yeah.
So difficult because obviously coming into League One and not knowing what's going to happen next season.
I don't think the bottom of League One is very much different to the top of League Two. That's my sort of controversial take. So I think the obviously the wages we're tossing out and the players we're looking to sign, we are looking to compete with your League One regulars like your Barnsley and your Boltons and your Blackpools. So I don't know.
Caliber of players that we've brought in so far, I think they're caliber. There's been a couple of surprises there, players that come in a positive light. So I'm gonna say a 7. I'm gonna say a 7.
7 out of 10 for quality. Great stuff. So some final quick fire questions from me then before we wrap up. Chris, starting with you, Chris, what's the biggest reason to believe in Bradford City right now?
The fans are together. There's positivity across the ground, across the club. Everything is in sync for the first time in years and years and years. That's why you believe in Bradford. The last time that happened, we did well.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Ewan, biggest reason for doubt?
I think honestly, I think it's that we've spent, and that's my biggest reason. Before the Humphrey signing, I think you could have the atmosphere was slightly different because, like I say, we looked like we were going to give it a go. We were going to strive for better than just survival, possibly. But the Humphrey signing, with apparently the money we're throwing at the wages, is more than just a statement of as a signing. It's a statement of we want to do something in the season. We're not just going to say, oh, well, we've survived and that was always the goal. When we have a good start to the season, then we dribble off and we finish 16th. We want to try to have some consistency. I think that is the goal next season. So, like you say, we're possibly looking at 12th or 11th as a sort of finish. So, yeah, I think the biggest doubt is the fact that we have thrown money at it, and that always has the potential to go wrong.
Too early for a prediction then, gents, but just give me a rough feeling on the direction that you think next season is going to go in.
It's so difficult to say. I honestly don't. I really, really, really don't know. Listen, it's not so. It's something that I've thought a lot about, kind of like looking at kind of the caliber of, I think for me, I'm not coming into League One thinking that it's going to be a walkover by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. It's like a mini championship now with the money that gets thrown around. There's talk of, for instance, about Huddersfield Town about to spend 2.5 million. It's really, really difficult to say. So I'll go 12th.
12th. Nice. What do you think?
I think that's fair. I would like to say, as a quick side joke, that I saw someone on social media predicting Bradford to finish 5th and to beat Huddersfield in the playoff final, which is out. I think that's the most out there prediction I've seen so far. And that was before we signed Humphreys as well and Torre. I think I'm in the same boat as Chris. I think we've spent enough to justify, but we're not going to be challenging in our first season. There may be rumblings of that in the terms of, they could make a late playoff push, but we won't. We'll fall off. And so I'm going to say 11th.
There you go, 12th and 11th. Those are the predictions. I wasn't expecting to get an actual league prediction at this stage, as I must say. Thanks for being very specific.
Not very happy to be proven wrong.
Absolutely. Well, I have to be.
It's our business.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, listen, gents, thank you so much. Great to see a Bradford City podcast up and running. So I'd implore everyone who's listened to go and subscribe and follow the 1911 podcast, because I've collaborated with Chris and Ewan for a long time, and I know you both produce some lovely stuff. So I hope everyone goes and subscribes and follows and all that. You can also subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been EFL Debate, the Bradford City Summer Deep Dive, and we'll see you again for another Summer Deep Dive in just a moment. Cheers.